Yo, what's up? My name's Patrouski, and one of the most common things I see in PokeMMO is players returning to the game after an extended break. So today, to help all of you returning players catch up on what's new, I will be recapping everything that happened in PokeMMO in the year 2024. And I was honestly shocked to see how much happened this year because it felt like a slow year, at least at first, since there was a big dry spell between the months of March to September, where PokeMMO didn't receive a single in-game update. And I think the sentiment from the community was that it was a slow year, which was actually kind of anticipated since we were coming off of the biggest year in PokeMMO history being 2023, where we saw more game-changing updates at record pace more than ever before. But I already have a video covering 2023, which will be linked in the description if you are interested. But I was genuinely shocked how much we actually got in terms of content in 2024. And after going through the update logs and just thinking back on what happened this year, I was really surprised. So let's go ahead and not waste any more time and dive into everything that happened in PokeMMO in the year 2024. First off, it's easy to forget, but we actually got 2 out of 3 of the Kanto legendaries that are now catchable and permanently ownable in 2024. Now, we did get Articuno towards the tail end of 2023, and that was the first edition of the Kanto legendaries, but we did end up getting Zapdos in January of 2024, and it's probably the most powerful legendary Pokemon that we've actually seen be added to the game that is permanently ownable, at least until maybe later into 2024, but we'll get to that when we get to it. And then Moltres was released in the following month in 2024 in February. We also saw raids get introduced into PokeMMO for the very first time. They were beta tested alongside the Lunar New Year event in sometime in the middle of February. And within the same event, we saw Shaman brought back for its second year. And to our knowledge, a shiny of Shaman still does not exist. Now, raids were unfortunately not quite yet added as a permanent mechanic in PokeMMO, but they have been brought back periodically for testing and were teased to hopefully have been permanently added into the game in late 2024, but we did miss the mark on that. Unfortunately, that did not happen. All we can do is look forward to the future and see more tests during the holiday events. Mystic Mirror is a new item that was also added to the game as a limited time item during the events. They are sometimes brought back during events, mostly the Lunar New Year event from my understanding, but the Mystic Mirror is the new item that actually allows you to change your gender and skin tone and base appearance of your character within game. This item actually took over and replaced the makeover kit and gender swap ticket, so now we just have one item to act as both of those. They also increased the amount of maximum PC boxes you can use in PokeMMO. So now you can buy up to 20 PC expansion drives, which are not cheap, but you can now have up to 32 total boxes, I believe, alongside the account box, which is also a new feature, which you can use to transfer Pokemon in between 3 different characters on the same login. So for example, if I log into my Patrouski account, but switch over to a different character, something like Snooki, for example, don't blame me, I named it when I was like 15, excuse me, we're going to head over to the account box and I can show you guys all of these high level and powerful Pokemon do transfer over, or you can drag them from the account boxes over to the other boxes on this character. Also, still during this time period around the Lunar New Year event, Garchomp actually regained access to Swords Dance outside of PvP. So you can actually use Swords Dance Garchomp now in PVM activities. And I think this was added alongside raids for it to be a possible viable option. For those who don't know, Garchomp was not able to learn Swords Dance for a very long time in PokeMMO, like over 5 years, I think, because it was just too powerful for PvP and even PVM activities. It made storylines and other things an absolute joke, so it needed to be banned, but now with the addition of more difficult PVM, it seems more suitable. Gym rerunning got a significant buff during February with these new teleporters added to a ton of gyms around a lot of regions within PokeMMO, allowing you to teleport directly over to certain gym leaders, totally changing the strategies and totally changing the route that people used for one of the best and most consistent moneymakers in PokeMMO being gym reruns. The Swarms turn-in mini-game for events was also invented around this time, which essentially means you can go around and catch these event-specific Swarm Pokemon, and then go ahead and turn them in for rewards, usually being mysterious balls, but it can also be specific vanities, and this has actually been brought back for the other various events of the year, such as the Halloween event and the Christmas event. We also got some of the first drastically different mounts in PokeMMO, or I guess bike sort of reskins, if you want to call it that. We got the Lucky Gold Dragon Vanity, and then also the Lucky Red Dragon Vanity. These were both RP items during the Lunar New Year event. But then after this update, after the Lunar New Year event, we didn't see anything for a very long time in PokeMMO. From February until July, we really didn't see anything at all in PokeMMO, and the community was definitely growing restless. It was one of the longest dry streaks I've ever seen for an in-game update in PokeMMO, because in July we didn't get an in-game update, but we did get something that I absolutely didn't see coming. We saw the first ever PokeMMO official Shiny Wars competition announced. This was a massive deal. Shiny War was a community-driven and community-created event about shiny hunters putting a ridiculous amount of hours, time, effort, and dedication into shiny hunting over a limited period of time and trying to prove themselves to be the best shunters in PokeMMO. To see this validified and to see it validated by the PokeMMO developers and staff was a massive deal, and it was a massive win for the community. A lot of players were upset when this update came out, or this was announced, because it wasn't an official in-game update, more of just a giant official 2-month-long competition held by the staff members, and the staff members were really just kind of going above and beyond. This was not the PokeMMO developers. The PokeMMO developers didn't actually put any time or resources into managing the Shiny Wars competition, or at least very few resources. This was mostly just the PokeMMO staff members going above and beyond and trying to give the community something, and they took a lot of unfair backlash for it at the time. And I think looking back, it's really interesting to observe that, and it's good to appreciate like how beautiful of a thing this was and how it set the precedent for the future of Shiny Wars and shiny hunting competitions within PokeMMO. And then similar to Shiny Wars, we also saw a giant long-term community event once again announced and held by the staff members on October 13th that would also last around 2 months, being 8 weeks. This was a PvE seasonal, essentially long-term catch event kind of competition in PokeMMO, where there were going to be 8 different mini catch events followed by a finale where you'd have to earn enough qualifier points by participating in enough of the 8-week competitions, and then in the finale you would have a chance at winning a rare shiny Pokemon, which is absolutely abnormal for a shiny a catching competition like this, and you'd even get first place got a super rare shiny, being one of the Kanto fossil shinies, and then second place also got a shiny even if they didn't win first place, and then third place also got the last shiny not picked. And while by the end of it, only 266 players actually got enough points to qualify, so with that math, you actually had a 3 out of 266 chance to win a shiny Pokemon just from playing a catch event, which is an amazing odds, really the best shiny odds you'll ever see in PokeMMO. It also ended up being the first catch event of this seasonal, was the most popular and most active catch event we've ever seen in PokeMMO, to the point where it was crashing the servers and people could not log into the game. We were getting server queues for a catch event, which is something that we've just genuinely never seen before in PokeMMO. A phrase that I should be uttering a lot more for 2024. This year really packed way more content than I remember, and there were so many things that we saw for the very first time. Next up, the UU tier got essentially entirely reset. A lot of Pokemon, pretty much all Pokemon, got unbanned from the tier, and things were totally reset and entirely rebalanced, bringing life to the quietest tier in PokeMMO and the market surrounding those Pokemon. A lot of things like Reckless Staraptor caught a lot of love and were really active in the markets. You can make a ton of Pokeyen by breeding Reckless Staraptor at these times, and also gain some nice elo by using the Pokemon. So far, it seems like it's kind of evened out, and a lot more people are actually playing UU now than before. And thus brings us to the Halloween event, which was the first time we had seen a piece of in-game content, actual physical update since February, which obviously disgruntled a lot of players, even though we saw a lot of things happen in the community like we've covered so far in between that time period. Now, this is going to be a little controversial, and there's a lot of people who have very strong opinions on this, but for me personally, this was the best Halloween event I've ever seen within PokeMMO, with the most amount of activities to do that's ever been in an event, in my personal opinion, as someone who's been playing this game since 2013 and has played his fair share of PokeMMO, Halloween, and all types of holiday events. most of which my experiences have been recorded and uploaded onto YouTube. You can actually check back and see me critiquing the 2023 event, as I feel like it was pretty lackluster, there wasn't that much to do, and the vanities were lacking. However, it was much more expected for that event to be kind of lackluster, since that was the year that Johto released, so no one was really expecting a whole lot. People were expecting a ton when it came to this update. It was the first in-game update we had seen for 6 to 8 months. There was a lot of rumors and staffs going around saying that the event was going to be a really big deal and going to be really exciting for the players. And to me personally, it lived up to that hype. But for a lot of players who've been waiting since February for an update, it just no update was going to live up to it, and or that update just didn't do it for them. I think that this update showcased some of the best increases in sprite artwork that I've seen from the devs ever in the history of PokeMMO, going from the things they used to make to now creating these blue flaming demon skulls or just normal flaming demon skulls that are orange. I like the orange one better. I can show you right here the flaming demon skulls. This is absolutely, it's because my language, batshit comparatively to what they used to make. We can actually compare the new age flaming skulls to the old ones if there's any of them on the GTL. For reference, this is a very, very similar vanity that they made back in 2016, known as the Blue Flaming Skull Mask. This is a very, very touted and very, very respected vanity within PokeMMO. But when the Blue Flaming Demon Skull came out, it caused an old vanity to go down in price, which is pretty rare. You don't see that very often, and it's kind of obvious as to why. The blue, the blue normal, the blue old skull mask is very rare, and it's very respected, and it's still a very valuable and really cool piece. But the Blue Flaming Demon Skull, the sprite work on this is just so ridiculous in comparison, and it makes sense. They've had 8 years to practice and improve their craft. We also got a new set of Halloween raids during this event, which one of the more notable ones being Speed Boost Scolipede being added to the game, which was a pretty nice thing for PvP to shake things up a little bit. And let's not forget the most controversial part of the Halloween update, which was Darkrai. Darkrai was added to PokeMMO, not as a permanently ownable legendary. It was added to PokeMMO as a giant raid boss that you could then complete and then unlock temporary access to Darkrai, which was extremely controversial, but it did bring us uber legendaries for the first time within PokeMMO, even if in a temporary way, and it opened up a doorway to add future powerful uber tier legendaries if they want to. The Darkrai situation is unfortunate because the community definitely seems to not like the summoning orb style of gameplay, which is super fair. If that's the direction that most people want, then that's the direction that most people want. And if the community kind of agrees at it en masse, they're probably right about something. So it's more about it's an unfortunate thing because they could either add uber tier legendaries via these temporary methods or just not add them at all. It kind of seems like the community would rather them just not add them at all and then have them actually add weaker, more permanently ownable legendaries, things like Heatran, which was wink wink added recently. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself quite yet. Another very controversial part of this update was the strings standardization, which is actually something that I had been predicting and talking about for a very long time in the PokeMMO community. If you don't know what string standardization is, don't worry, it doesn't really matter too much, but for you if you don't know, but if you do know what custom strings are or do know about strings, then it's a pretty big impact on your gameplay. If you don't know, custom strings are essentially this thing that you go find. It's like a third-party add-on / mod that you install into your game, and it physically changes the way that your game reads certain text. It will skip over certain text to make your game faster. Now, if you've ever played any online game, that might strike a giant red bell in your head. Wait a minute, you could download something to make your game faster? That seems unfair. Any game with any sort of online leaderboards or any sort of MMO, that would never work. That's an unfair advantage. And you're basically right, except the only reason that strings were allowed for a long time, at least for a few years, was because if you played the game on a different language, aka usually Mandarin, the game actually operated at a faster pace. The NPCs would speak things out faster since there was just less characters in that language. So the devs said, you know what, to keep it fair, let's just go ahead and allow people to use custom strings to pick up to that pace of different languages. However, eventually the community kind of took it too far, and using strings was just a specific strict advantage over not using strings. Now, strings is a very long, interesting historical thing in PokeMMO, and there is a really good reason why strings are a good thing, and I'm a huge fan of the pace of play that strings give. I was always a big advocate for strings were really interesting for breeding for a rare shiny. It made it very skill-based, which is kind of unintuitive, like, oh, a Pokemon game being mechanically intensive, that's really interesting, and, you know, if someone was really, really good, they would do like 500 eggs an hour, versus someone who was mediocre would only do like 360. It was a really big skill gap in terms of mechanics in a Pokemon game, which I thought was very cool. However, there's still the massive issue of needing to go download a third-party program to play your game at a faster pace. This is just weird and clunky and doesn't work for any sort of mainstream audience. At least in my opinion. Feel free to disagree with everything I say. I definitely do inject a lot of my opinions into videos like this, even though I'm really just trying to recap what happened. I also want to give the developers' side of things and their perspective so people can understand why the changes happened in the first place. But don't take everything I say here as absolute fact. I definitely am interjecting some of my own personality and opinions, and I apologize if that's not your cup of tea. But thankfully, alongside the string standardization, which is essentially trying to remove strings from the game, they buffed a lot of things to hopefully make up for that. So for example, they actually totally rehauled the breeding UI in PokeMMO. They made it so that whenever you go talk to the daycare man, the more times you talk to him in a row, you'll actually get rid of text over time, which is really useful for those egg rare shunters who need to do it at a very, very fast mechanical pace. And also, as you can see here, the screen looks very, very different, and you can select breeders from your PC, allowing you to not have to run back and forth to the PC whenever you're making eggs. So you sort of just select your breeders like this, and then you would go through with a breed. You can select your gender up here. It really kind of kept the pacing. If anything, it was a buff, actually. Normally, for example, I'll give you my own numbers. Prior to this change, I would do around 400 eggs per hour on average. I was not the best mechanical player by any means, and I would talk to Twitch chat throughout. Afterwards, I think today I did a batch of 468 or so, or 450 or so within an hour. So this was just a straight up buff. It was now easier for players to get higher numbers and after the string standardization. Which is good because a lot of players were scared that after removing strings, it would slow down the pace of the game too much. We saw a similar change over to fossil reviving, where now if you revive a bunch of fossils, they just get sent straight to your PC instead of having to go put them back in the PC. I also think that was partly added because something called fossil running became a thing during official PokeMMO Shiny Wars, which was essentially where hyper-rich players would buy a ton of fossils, revive them all at once, and then trade them over to whatever characters, whatever players wanted essentially free fossil Pokemon so that they could clear their inventory space. They didn't care about the Pokeyen, they were just trying to clear their inventory space at a much faster pace so that they could keep reviving fossils. It was a cool money-making method at the time because anybody with an alt account or anybody willing to run those fossil Pokemon could make over 1 million Pokeyen per hour. It was pretty extreme, but it was also rough for the competition during Shiny Wars. We also saw another controversial update around this time. I think nerfs in general are just something that most players hear the word and they kind of cringe, but most developers and most ingrained high-end players understand that nerfs are how you properly balance a game for the long term. Nerfs are extremely crucial to making a game work and keeping it healthy. Without nerfs, PokeMMO would have died back in 2015. I'm sorry, but that is absolutely the truth. And now moving on to the actual nerf that happened, let's talk about netball. So netball was a problematic thing. Netball got buffed back in around, I want to say the end of 2023 to go from a catch rate boost of 2.5 up to 3.5, which allowed people to soak dittos and then catch dittos at a mass rate, much faster and much more successful than before. Prior to the netball buff, you could catch dittos at around an 80% accuracy if you threw like the best strat of the time was to false swipe spore and then to dusk ball. With the new netball strat where you would then soak the Pokemon or use like a Fortress to let it turn into a bug type and then vault switch out, and a little more complicated. But this allowed you to catch Ditto with 95-98% accuracy. So the netball buff took Dittos from being around an 80% catch rate at the peak strategies to a 95-98%, making it much easier to farm Dittos and really hurting and crashing the 1x31 economy. Now, there's a lot of other things that have been hurting the 1x31 economy within PokeMMO, and it's something I've been talking about for quite a while. But that's another topic for a different video, I guess. But alphas are probably what's what's next on the chopping block to get nerfed. That's my prediction. I could totally be wrong, but the netball nerf was part of that solution for saving the economy when it comes to 1x31 and good IV Pokemon. When Dittos are easily catchable, every other egg group has to follow suit, since Ditto can breed with every other Pokemon, if that makes sense. If a Ditto costs, 3k for a 1x31 attack IV, then every other egg group has to be below that price almost inherently. And then a small buff that many people probably didn't even notice is that now you can actually bike within the Johto Safari Zone, which is kind of nice for any Johto Safari Zone shunters, which there are a fair amount of. It's probably one of the best Safari Zones to actually go shiny hunt in. And then on top of that, berry planting dialogue was shortened/buffed, and there were a bunch of other quality of life changes, including adding a turn counter in battle. Whether in PvM or PvP, you can now see what turn it is within the battle during the battle log, which is especially helpful if you're trying to use a timer ball to catch certain Pokemon, or you're trying to track things like certain weather setting things or reflect or light screens in PvP. All right, that covers the Halloween event. I know it was a lot, but we're almost done. Let's go ahead and go over the Christmas event. The Christmas or winter event in PokeMMO brought us a whopping 15 total new raids to the game, and these were some of the most difficult and intricate raids we've ever seen within PokeMMO. I do have a dedicated playlist to all of the raids that have appeared so far in PokeMMO on my YouTube channel that I recommend checking out if you want to see the full fights in action. But we essentially got 12 Christmas raids on top of Jirachi being the reward for beating those Christmas raids. One of the most notable ones from those raids being Tangrowth. We did get hidden ability access Tangrowth, which is Regenerator, which has been tearing up a storm over in OU PvP. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Is Regenerator Tangrowth is super powerful and costs a pretty penny on the GTL. But more importantly, Jirachi was added. I kind of glossed over, but Jirachi was added to the game, a new legendary Pokemon able to be permanently owned if you did all of the Christmas raids and then did the Jirachi raid. There's actually 17 hours left in the Christmas event as I'm recording this video on January 8th. So if I've stuttered more than usual in this video, or it's kind of been a little scattered, that's why. My deepest apologies. I'm pretty tired from the event still, but Shiny Wars is kind of around the corner for PokeMMO for Team Mister. So I actually wanted to get this video recorded and out to you guys so people can catch up on 2024 as soon as possible. But there you go, my little intermittent ramble. Next up, we also got access to Alpha Suicune, and this I can confidently say is the most difficult raid I've ever seen introduced into PokeMMO, bar none. I was coached through this raid by a PVM expert, being Cav, a fellow PokeMMO YouTuber, on stream for 3 hours. It took me 3 hours to beat this raid due to a bunch of different mistakes that, along as over the time, eventually players made. Over 3 hours, you misclick, you make mistake, you forget an item. A lot of mistakes just happen. I made plenty of mistakes. My teammates made plenty of mistakes. It's just with a raid like this, there's so many things to factor in. Mistakes are going to happen. Mistakes happen and bad RNG happened, making this an absolute slogfest of a raid. But I did luckily complete it, and you did need to get this during the Christmas event. You only had 15 days or so, the length of the event, to do 12 raids, Christmas raids, plus do Jirachi, plus do the Alpha Suicune raid, plus do all the other content you may have wanted to do during the event. So they brought back turning in swarms for prizes and gave a bunch of vanities with that, like the Xmas Wreath or the Santa Beard being a pretty cool, notable vanity from this event. Since they're still in the shop, I can actually just show you guys the current limited time RP items, being the teal Wishmaker robes and the red Wishmaker robes from this event, as well as the purple Christmas Slade appeared for the very first time as a seasonal item during this event. And they also added during this event a Heatran raid, which is a really massive deal and something that a lot of high-level PvP players were asking for, saying that Heatran would solve a lot of the major problems in the PokeMMO PvP metagame. So Heatran has been added to the game via a Big Daddy sort of raid that you can all go do. And it's a permanent raid. It's a permanent legendary raid added to the game that is not tied to the event. So after watching this video, if you really wanted to, you could go try this raid out right now, but I'll warn you, it's very difficult. I myself have not even attempted it yet because I've been too busy with the other event limited time stuff. And then next up, they did bring back the holiday boost. So if you played the Christmas event in 2023 or maybe watched my 2023 recap, you might actually be aware of this. There is something called the Happy Holidays from PokeMMO Boost, which boosts your shiny rate. Now, back in 2023, they gave everything a plus 20% shiny boost. And I, as a big shiny hunter, I was actively kind of outspoken against this. I did not like this sort of mechanic. I thought it was fine as a one-off sort of thing to apologize for being late on Johto's release, for example, but I really didn't want to see this return in PokeMMO every single year because it creates a problematic style of play where it becomes efficient to save your fossils and save all of your dittos and save all of the rare shunts until that 1 or 2 week period, and then it becomes inefficient and it feels bad. You start feeling guilty for shiny hunting rares outside of that period of play, and I want people to be able to play the game how they want. I think if you want to play the game at max efficiency, which is something that I don't do, I think it's good to be able to play the game at max efficiency without needing to only, save up everything and only play that kind of style during the Christmas event. So I was outspoken against that, and I don't know if the developers heard me or not, but this change kind of fixed all my worries. So what happened is, number one, they lowered the boost from 20% down to 15%, and this boost doesn't affect any Shedinja encounters, any egg encounters, any fossil encounters. This boost only affects wild Pokemon encounters, which is perfect because you can't really store up wild Pokemon encounters. Like, you can store up Lepa berries or expert lures to help you get those encounters, but you have to put in the raw time. There's not really a storage problem. So I think this is actually the perfect way to implement the Happy Holidays boost, which is a beautiful way to do it. I thought it was really cool. So there is, it'll probably return in future years, but it's obviously not guaranteed. Keep an eye out for a shiny boost, a Happy Holidays boost in future winter events. And then a sleeper big update that happened during this event, the item magnet charm actually got buffed. This is a pretty unintuitive item. So previously the item magnet charm was used during when you were payday pickupping. It would give you an increased chance of pickupping wild items when battling Pokemon. However, in PokeMMO, you can also frisk thief items off of Pokemon. There is wild pickup items that you get from defeating the Pokemon in the battle, and there's also Pokemon wild held items. And people often thought or assumed that item magnet charm buffed held items. And if you read the way the item reads, I understand, I totally get why people assumed that. So this update, they went ahead and said, you know what, let's just go ahead and make it work like that. They buffed item magnet charm to also buff the chance of wild Pokemon holding items. So things like amulet coin farming, things like flame orb farming, iron ball farming, all became pretty interesting money-making methods, and the items also exploded on the GTL in terms of price because they became a lot rarer. They kind of nerfed things and buffed things, and the price has gone up on a lot of these items. We can see flame orb here. We could go over to, I guess, leftovers is one that's a different one. Amulet coin has gone up by like 5,000 Pokeyen. That is a lot for an item tied to other money-making methods like gym rerun. So a lot of things, especially Iron Ball, has just really gone up, which is really funny because it's needed for certain strategies regarding Suicune, which is always very interesting to see items like this absolutely skyrocket in price. Heat Rock also went up in price during this event, which is something we've seen historically kind of happening, which is hilarious to me because it was always a very cheap item in PokeMMO for an extremely long time. And then we also got a new round of Mysterious Balls, being PokeMMO Mysterious Balls 2024. So we have the 2024 Mysterious Pokeballs, 2024 Great Balls, and 2024 Ultra Balls. The Pokeballs did get nerfed in comparison to all the other ones except for Pokeballs got nerfed. So the 2023 Mysterious Pokeballs have a 1 out of 8k base chance for a shiny, which is the same as 2024. The 2023 Great Balls, however, had a 1 out of 4k base chance for a shiny, whereas 2024 was 1 out of 6,000. And then Ultra Balls in 2023 were a 1 out of 2,500 base chance, while in 2024 they were a 1 out of 4k. So these balls do seem to be nerfed in comparison to previous years. And then finally, we also got a ton of new PVM and PvP items within PokeMMO, such as Heavy Duty Boots, aka Reinforced Boots, which is not usable in PvP at the current time, but I assume they're looking to introduce it. But I know it's kind of a hot topic item. There's also the punching gloves, which increase punching moves by 10%. The covert mantle, which was pivotal during a lot of these raids. A held item which prevents additional effects of foes damaging moves. We got the loaded dice, which I know have been played with a ton with things like Breloom in PvP. We got safety goggles, which is theorized right now to be a massive impact on Ditto hunting, but I haven't seen much testing done yet. We got protective pads, type policy, throat spray, room service, snowball, and glowing moss. And on that note, I believe that is mostly everything recapped that happened in PokeMMO in the year 2024. If I missed anything that you think is super crucial, please let me know in the comments, because I'm sure that I did. Like the video if it was helpful to you. That is the easiest, freest way to support me. Dislike the video if you think it was just missing way too much information and wasn't actually that helpful for the time you put into it. Subscribe to the video, or subscribe to the channel if you want to see PokeMMO videos every single day. I do upload every single day. Follow me on Twitch for streams, usually Monday through Thursday at 12 p.m. ET. Discord's down below if you want to join a really cool community that loves this game. And if you want to go above and beyond and support my content, the best way to do so this month, specifically if you're watching in the first month of release, is Factor, which will be linked first thing in the description. It's a beautiful meal service where they send you fresh made, chef made meals directly to your door. You put them in your fridge, you pop them in the microwave for 2 minutes, and it's just mess free. It's super easy. You don't have to think about cooking. I honestly love Factor, and it's the best way to support the channel, so check it out. But if you don't want to do that, there's Twitch subs, YouTube memberships, just donations, PayPal. You guys know the drill. You guys have been on the internet long enough. I believe in you. I appreciate you. Just thank you for your time here today. I know it was a longer video, and thank you for your patience. Hopefully it was helpful. Have a beautiful time, and I am so excited for 2025 in PokeMMO, and I hope to see you guys there. Hey, thank you so very much for watching until the very end of the video. That means the world to me. And if your name is listed here, you're the reason I'm able to do this in the first place by going above and beyond and supporting the channel via YouTube memberships and Twitch Primes. Thank you so much. Have a great day.